Now we turn to another top story. That is the imperative reopening of this country in a safe way that is also urgent. It's time to get moving. Let's take a look.
Our country wants to open. The governors, it's in their hands, but our country wants to open. And you see what's going on. They have to open. And the people of our country should think of themselves as warriors. Our country has to open.
President Trump is right. The pandemic is far from over. Americans, they are not going to cower in fear. I think we see the American people have assessed the danger. They have looked at what we've learned, and we've learned a lot. And probably the biggest lesson coming from the great state of Florida, and that would be Governor Ron DeSantis, who did the best job, almost the best job. There were a couple of other governors in the country. He protected the elderly and the sick and the vulnerable. In other words, the opposite of what New York and Connecticut and Michigan did. It is time to get our country back to work. Let's take a look.
Our country has to go back to being our country again. You have people that are not going to stand for this, and I understand them very well.
The University of Washington saying we could have 135,000 Americans dead by August. What do you make of those numbers, Mr. President?
A couple of things. First of all, these models have been so wrong from day one, both on the low side and the upside. They've been so wrong. They've been so out of whack. And they keep making new models, and they're wrong. Those models that you're mentioning are talking about without mitigation. Well, we're mitigating, and we've learned to mitigate, but we can be in place, work in place, and also mitigate.
And the travel ban, January 31st, 10 days after the first known identified coronavirus case in America. Wow. The president didn't do that. It would have been exponentially worse on every level. Let's face it. All these models have been dead wrong, and decisions were made based on bad models on both sides. In the past few weeks, we have seen these supposed scientific models. They get revised down and up and up and down. Remember, the initial death projections were over 2.2 million Americans, way off base. But the president's travel ban, no denying, and quarantine and subsequent travel bans saved incalculable numbers of lives in this country. His historic medical mobilization, led by the president, also saved this country from untold amounts of suffering. Look at your screen. No country has tested more than the United States of America, and as you can see, it is not even close. Now, this kind of progress on testing was almost unthinkable just 2 months ago. Ultimately, the doom and gloom predictions, thankfully, never came true. Worst case scenario never happened, in large part because of that hysterical, racist, xenophobic, fear-mongering travel ban of the president 10 days after the first case. For some reason, the rhetoric on the left gets more and more hysterical. They were busy impeaching the president. Someone over there at Fake News CNN actually suggesting that going outside, getting fresh air, is a betrayal to healthcare workers. These people over there at Fake News are nuts. Take a look.
The president seems to be saying that it's safe to go to the parks and the beaches. Does that argument make any sense to you?
No, and I think in some ways it really betrays the really hundreds of thousands of people in the United States who work in hospitals day and night to try and save lives. This is coming from the top, and it's incredibly destructive. Everyone in medicine knows this.
Socially distant, they're wearing masks. Sorry, you guys are nuts. And I bet none of you supported the travel ban either. Now, while the mob and the media, they're apparently rooting for an indefinite shutdown, well, the American people, they know better. They're fighting back. This is not mission accomplished, not until, as the president said, it's completely solved. Still, we are now working on getting the country back to work and back to work safely, same time preventing predictable new hotspots from emerging and pouncing on them if and when they do. And now Americans must do what we do best. That's create, innovate, and work like hell to rebuild the country. Make no mistake, this kind of exceptionalism is not derived from big government. That was the case. Well, let's see, the former Soviet Union would be the best place on earth to live, or Venezuela. Tough choices will be made, precautions will be taken, they're necessary, but it's interim, won't last forever. Many people are struggling. Look at this one Dallas salon owner who was given 7 days in jail for reopening too soon. The judge told her she could avoid punishment if she apologizes for her actions. She refused, good for her, because feeding her kids was more important. And it's interesting how creative people are when they are opening. Oh, plexiglass, masks, social distancing, they're doing it all. They learned, America learned. This is why we can reopen and do it safely, like the state of Florida did, not the state of New York, and not the state of Michigan. Millions of Americans across the country are experiencing a lot of hardship. Another example, out in California, their tourism industry could lose, well, as much as $72 billion. By the way, that is not the people of Tennessee's responsibility. In Michigan, almost every business is suffering because of dozens of insane authoritarian measures from their left-wing governor, touted to be Biden, the ever-forgetful one's vice presidential running mate. Now, pursuant to an executive order that recently expired, Whitmer banned, jet skis, motorboats, gun stores, shooting ranges, camping at campgrounds. She forced retailers to close their plant sections. She banned lawyers and realtors from leaving their homes for work. And she even banned lawn and garden services, closed golf courses, car washes, showrooms for cars and bicycle shops, and private construction. Now, the list could go on, just dumb, draconian, a lot of this. And she has done an awful job of trying to protect the people in her state. Instead of focusing her state's most vulnerable communities, focus on them, the elderly, nursing homes, she enacted broad measures for everyone. Meanwhile, Florida Governor DeSantis did the exact opposite. And the numbers, they speak for themselves. By far, he did one of the best jobs in the country. Look at your screen. Well, numbers tell the whole story. Fatality rate at Florida's long-term care facilities drastically lower than Michigan, and obviously New York's numbers are the worst because they didn't use the 3,000 beds at the Javits Center that the president manned and built and converted to COVID-19 patients. They used 1,000 of the 3,000 beds. They only used 182 beds at the hospital ship, the Navy ship, the Comfort. 182. It's built for 1,000. COVID-19 converted. Nope. March 25th, executive order sent all the COVID-19 patients back into the long-term facilities. And, oh, by the way, that's where 30% of the people in New York died. And by the way, the fatality rate, New York's long-term facilities, 18%. Florida, just over 1%. And they have the largest elderly population in the country. DeSantis got it right. Cuomo, Whitmer, they all got it wrong. Maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with Governor Cuomo's insane policy. Nursing homes admit and readmit patients who test positive for coronavirus, and I'm not responsible for your PPE. What? At one point, it got so bad, New York was reportedly sending elderly coronavirus patients back to these nursing homes with body bags. They did that all over the state.